I will define corruption as the abuse of a position of power to obtain a personal gain, mainly involved with money in the public sector. As the authors of the book Corruption, What Everyone Needs to Know say when mentioning examples, quote, they all involve in exploiting public office for private gain. There are others who broaden the definition of corruption to include exploitative behaviors by those employed in the private sector as well. End quote.
It is important because if we don't combat, we may lose a lot of political power. We may lose many economy laws and even the decision or the power over our decisions in what we make to our future. In economic consequences, we can find a lot of capital loss. In political, we can find a lot of consequences between how we have the power over the rule or the control. And in social aspects, we can find a lot of disruptions and a lot of even violence and disagreements that can be between all of these social environments.
I think not battling corruption only allows for the people in power to have more of it and form a different kind of control over the position where the only people benefited are the ones in on corrupt acts, with everyone else having unfair treatment. Corruption not only enables the violation of human rights but contributes to it. It allows the people in power to directly deny these rights to whomever they want. Examples of these are election fraud, where people's right to vote is made useless. Bribes to gain advantage or faster service in public government processes diminishes the right of people for whichever services they look for in this aspect. This comes worst for groups with less information about their rights. As the United Nations Human Rights Office says in their page, quote, disadvantaged groups and persons suffer disproportionately from corruption. They are often more reliant on public goods and services and have limited means to look for an alternative private services. End quote. Democracy is a system which needs to be free of corruption to function the way it's supposed to. It has processes which require the trust of the people, like elections and the management of people's money.
Because if I resist to corruption, I won't be affecting the community and environment. Because once one action or one person comes to the corruption or does something corrupt, well, it affects not only what he's doing or the area he's doing, but all the community.
Corruption in some levels takes place with the help from normal citizens, so by participating in it, we allow it to keep happening everywhere else. So, the bare minimum every citizen can do to diminish corruption is to not take part in it. To prevent and combat corruption in every level, the mentality of the people is needed to be anti corruption. The normalization of acts of corruption is what makes it difficult to combat in countries like Mexico. Even when we have that, there needs to be big figures that stand up to corruption, like an organization, so it makes a symbol for the people to know cases are being investigated and people are getting consequences for their corrupt acts. As seen in class, these theories help us learn the possible thinking processes of people that partake in corruption, which is a very important factor to have in mind when planning how to combat corruption. For example, the contingent behavior theory, claiming the decisions you make depend on the decisions other people make. It's a very good example of the way of thinking normalized in Mexico, because while more people accept and partake in corruption, more people seeing it are more likely to do the same.
All of these disciplinary perspectives refer to parts of how the world functions. It needs to have a politic, economic, and social aspect to create a democratic nation like Mexico, and any problem that skates to the whole country needs to be investigated in all aspects of it, because they create the way the place and people behave. We know it's a political and economic problem because it's the flashiest of the three. Money and people in power are seen making big corrupt acts, but the social aspects is just as important. Corruption is, quote, characterized by the destruction of fundamental values and standards of society, end quote. The case we reviewed in class was the Odebrecht case. It exemplifies corruption at a very large scale. It's the largest bribery scandal in the Americas, with $200 million in illegal commissions given to various people in Latin American countries. This was done by a Brazilian construction company named Odebrecht, which got involved with a Mexican political figure named Losaya, while they were trying to obtain influence in other countries. And to obtain this influence, they gave various amounts of money to Losaya and the campaign of Javier Duarte de Ochoa.